Hi, this is Russ Bucher from ControlMyNikon. In this tutorial video, we're going to take a look at how to use image browsers with ControlMyNikon. Now, an image browser is just a program that you use to take a look at the image that you just captured using ControlMyNikon. And there's several different ways that we can do this. Now, where we configure it is up here in the Tools menu, down to Preferences, and then we go to the Image Browser tab. Now this is where we configure where we're going to send our captured image for review. And we have three options. One is the internal browser. Now this is a new internal browser for version 4. As you may have saw at the beginning of our video, the version 3 browser wasn't terribly good, and people let us know about it. And so we've been encouraged to make a better browser, and we definitely think the new browser is a huge improvement over the old one. It's been specifically tuned to work with ControlMyNikon and to display certain types of data that only ControlMyNikon can capture. And really, this should be your first choice for image browsers. Now, I know that a lot of you are used to using other image browsers, and you can continue to use those as well. If you wanted to use the internal image browser, you just put a check mark here. And if you wanted it to load on startup and unload on the shutdown, you can set that up as well. When you start capturing in ControlMyNikon, it's going to, even though you have a check mark here, unless you go up here and launch the image browser, it's not going to launch the image browser for you. So you need to just go up here and click on it and bring it up. But I'm just going to disable that for now. Now you can also use Windows Explorer. So this is just the file browsing program that comes with all versions of Windows. It's a very basic image review application. You could see your images as a list of files or as icons or even something a little bit larger, and but it's not terribly good. Adobe Bridge is a pretty good image review program. However, it's pretty pricey as well, and we'll take a look at how we can use Adobe Bridge here in a moment. First of all, let's just try out these external ones, and then we'll go into our internal image browser. First of all, let's try Windows Explorer. So I'll just put a check mark here, and I don't have any others. If you had check marked all of these, all of them will be used. So you can have up to 3 image browsers launching after you capture an image. Not terribly useful, but maybe just pick the one that you want. Okay, I'm going to close this. Now let's take a look at our shot here. I'm just going to open up Live View. So we have a radiometer and our studio lighting here. We're going to use this as our subject for our images. Okay, well, I don't need Live View up to capture, so I'm going to close that for now. And just go back to Preferences and confirm I have it set to Windows Explorer. So I'm just going to take my first shot. And our images here, I have it set to be captured to C images. And I've already put this window so it fits nicely in this area here for a tutorial video. Sometimes it'll open up full screen or basically wherever you left this Windows Explorer last. But here I'm in the C images folder as we're saving to, and I have the main counter on, so I gave it a number of 10. That's where our current counter is at. And you could change this. You can go and say, make it different sizes, or change it to that view. And there's a bunch of different ways to present this data. Now, the only problem with this is that it does not show you the image you just captured. So if I take a shot here, you notice it's currently looking at this one. I'll take a shot, and it's still going to be showing that image. It's not going to show you this new 11.jpg I just shot. So that's a bit of a pain, you have to go here and click on it to be able to see it. Now, if you right-click and go to the utils that come with Windows, such as Windows Photo Viewer, you can cycle through these different images that are in that folder. But also, if I take a shot, it doesn't update this. It doesn't really do anything. So, so not the greatest choice as an image browser, but it's there in case you need it. Okay, I'm going to delete these. And we're going to go take a look at Adobe Bridge. So if I go back to the Preferences menu and say, let's see, take off Windows Explorer, put on Adobe Bridge. Now you must specify where the executable for Adobe Bridge is. This can be in a lot of different locations and for a lot of different versions of Bridge. I'm running Adobe Bridge CS5 and I'm running Adobe Bridge CS5. So you can just click here and you can browse for it. And Adobe Bridge has several executables. The one you want is this one right here, bridge.exe. Okay, so I have it set. I've got my path. I'll close that. And now I'll take my shot. And when I take my shot, it's going to launch Adobe Bridge for us. It's going to take us to this folder and show us the image. Now the nice thing about Adobe Bridge is there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of metadata and a good way to catalog your images. If I take another shot, it's going to track that and show you the shot that you just took. So already it's better than Windows Explorer. But an advantage here is that it's integrated with the rest of the Photoshop app, so you can easily go here and open it up in, say, Photoshop. If you were to open this up by pressing the spacebar so you could see it full screen and you go to capture another image, it does not show you the most recent image. It'll only show you the most recent image captured in thumbnail view. Okay, so that's Adobe Bridge. Works pretty good, except it won't show you the current image in a larger view. So I'm just going to close this, and let's take a look at the built-in internal browser. Go back to Preferences, turn off Adobe Bridge, and I'm going to turn this on. So now that it's enabled, if I take a shot, it captures the image, but that's it, because we need to launch the image browser. So let's bring this up. Okay, now that we have the image browser up, you can see that we're still looking in the C images folder, and I'm just going to delete all these for now, and then we'll capture some more images. So as soon as we capture, it will show you the most recent thumbnail, and it shows you the preview and some histogram and metadata information. You can see here we are in the C images folder, and you can just click amongst the different folders here and see what's in it. I'll go back to images. Alright, so if I take another shot, you'll see it will also highlight the most recently captured image. We're up to 21 now. So when you are shooting and you like to see how your exposure was or your composition, you can just shoot while keeping this image browser up, and it'll show you what you most recently shot. One of the advantages of the internal image browser is if you were to select it and double click on it or press the spacebar, you could see it larger. And now if I shoot again, it's going to still show me the most recently captured image here as you take the shot. So you see there's a bit of motion here. I'll take another shot, and you can see now that is the most recent image that has been captured. If I go back to thumbnails, you can see it's still on the most recently captured image. Now the folder that it's saved to and the file naming is covered in another video on files and folders, and it's very flexible about how you could set up dynamic folder and file names. But we're going to take a look now at the different features of this built-in image browser. It will show you the images that you've captured, and you can go here and you can right click and delete an image, or you can just press delete on the keyboard, delete an image, or you could select all, press delete, delete a bunch of images. Okay, no problem deleting images. You cannot delete folders on here. If you want to mess with folder deletions, and we're very cautious about deleting entire folders of anything, so you need to do a little extra work. You need to go to right click, go to Explore. Now you can see this under Windows Explorer, and you can rename or delete folders to your heart's content here. So just a bit of a gotcha in using the internal image browser. And also, once you have an image here, you cannot launch an external editor as well. This is really just for reviewing your image and not editing it. There's no editing capabilities here at all. So let's take a look at the different parts of the browser here. Here we have our menus, and there's right clicks that you can do in a lot of the places here, and those are duplicated up here in the menus. Now, one very important part of the menu here is the sync menu. So if you enable this, so that means that any image you capture will immediately be shown here. So as we were shooting, it keeps up with it and it shows you the most recent one. But if I take sync off, you can see it's now disabled, and shoot, it's not going to do that. And the reason for that is you may be browsing in other folders and also capturing. You don't want it to jump to the current folder and the current image when you're doing that. And when you're ready to do that, you just go back here and go enabled. Now you notice it didn't update anything. It didn't even show me that image here. is we can just come back into this folder, and there it is. And we have the option here also of rebuilding the thumbnails. These thumbnails are 100 by 100 pixels maximum, and they'll be automatically rotated to the correct orientation depending on what the orientation of the image was as detected by the camera. Now, on most cameras, you're able to set on the LCD menu whether to include orientation information on your images. If you want this rotation to work correctly in the image browser, you need to ensure that is enabled on your camera as well. Okay, so that's basically the thumbnail. So if I right click here, you can tell it to rebuild, update any missing thumbnails you might think that you have, and also to now view it, you can just click on view and it brings it up to this size. Now if I hit escape on the keyboard, it brings you back. You can also use the space bar on the keyboard to bring it up and escape to bring you back. Now if you hit space bar and space bar again, it brings it up full screen. Then you can hit the escape to bring you back one level, escape to bring you back the other level. Now in the folders over here, you can go to different drives. And here I'm just on my C drive. And if you find that you need to come back often to a particular folder, you can set up shortcuts to that folder. So let's say I often go to folder number 27 here. I could say add a shortcut. It shows up in my shortcut list. If I often go to images as well, you can add that. And it'll keep this information when you shut down ControlMyNikon in the image browser. Next time you bring it back up, your shortcuts will still be here. So now if I want to quickly go to folder 27, you can just double click, or you right click and say view, and you can double click here. So just lets you navigate very quickly. If you right click, you can see you can clear or delete your shortcuts. And if you want to explore a shortcut, you just go explore, and now it's going to bring those up in Windows Explorer. And you can do the same here. Right click, explore. Now if you're missing some folders here, and sometimes if you are shooting or you went and created some separate folders outside ControlMyNikon, they don't show up automatically here. What you can do is hit refresh. The reason they don't show up automatically is really a matter of performance, so it isn't having to scan the hard drive for new folders. Now whenever you select one of these images, it also changes the information over here on the right side of the screen. So if I look here, I have our preview, our histogram, and our metadata. And I'm just going to go up to a bit of more of an interesting image here. Let's pick this image right here. Now you can resize these to give you a little bit more information and be able to see more thumbnails, and you can also resize this. Now on this preview, you can press this or rotate it, but already the image was rotated to the orientation it detected that was in use from the camera. And you can rotate it the other direction here. We also have a button here for canceling the histogram tracking. And the histogram tracking is this. Whenever you go to the histogram and you hold your left mouse button down and drag your mouse, it selects an area of the histogram. And that area of the histogram that is selected is shown up here in the preview. And that allows you to explore your exposure. So for example, if you'd like to know what is this little peak down here, that must be very dark. What you can do is just select it and then take a look. Now you can see it's selected in blue, and because there's a lot of colors here, sometimes it's tough to tell where the selection is. So whenever you select a peak here, this little color picker opens up, and now you can move your mouse and you can see exactly what it's referring to. I'm just going to leave it this color here. If you're wondering what this peak is, it can show you. How about these highlights? There's not very many of them at all. You can see they're right on the tip of the nose here of this. You can see that the highlights are right on the tip of this hood ornament. This image was captured back in Louisville, Kentucky during a Hot Rod Association meet about 5 years ago. There was over 10,000 customized hot rods at this place. It was incredible photography. It's a fun time. So now whenever you want to get rid of your selection, you can just click on this button here or right click on the histogram. And then your color picker also goes away. Now your histogram has different channels. Right now we're looking at the luminance channel, but you can look at the red channel. And if you're wondering where is this red, and because it's predominantly a very red image, there's a lot of it. So you're wondering where that is? It's right there. This allows you to see if you're blowing out any of your color channels. And blowing out a color channel is a problem if you're going to be changing the exposure or the colors in post-processing. So for example here, if I look at my green, it's got that much, and if I look at my blue channel, there's lots of blue here. That means because I have a large amount of blue that's already at the lowest possible value. In other words, at this end, there is no blue in this area. That means it can't be reduced any further. So if you go to change the overall color or the tint of this image in post-processing, the blue has nowhere to go. And it's going to bottom out, and it's not going to change the color very well. If you look at the green has a little ways to move over here, and red a little bit as well. So it's the same if you wanted to darken this image. You don't have a lot of room to move here either. You can nudge it a bit to the left, but you really can't do too much. So sometimes you have no choice though. It depends on what the color variations are of your image. But of course a perfect image would be one that isn't blown out in either direction in any color channel either, and that gives you the most flexibility in post-processing. Unless, of course, you want to blow it out for, artistic purposes. You want something pure black or pure white. Now, when you hold your mouse over the preview, it shows you the exposure on the histogram of whatever is underneath the mouse cursor at the time. So if I go over to this black area here, you can see how this bar is way over to the left. And if you're wondering where this brighter area here on his chin is, you can say, yeah, that makes sense. It could be way over on the right-hand side. So this also allows you to explore the image. Now we have other histogram exploration tools when you go to the larger view of this image. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Now the metadata for this particular image is down here, and really this is just some common metadata here. It shows the size, the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture, and there's a bit more information down here. Now one thing this does show you, which very few other programs do, is your shutter count. Because this is a Nikon dedicated application, we pull this information out of your EXIF data and show it here. So this particular camera had 1,630 shutter activations as of this image, and this must have been my old D80. Yes, indeed it is. So that's one way to see how many shutter activations you have. And if we take a look at these other images here, and we're really looking at raw images, and something to note is when you look at a raw image in an image browser such as this, and even Adobe Bridge does the same thing, you're really just looking at the embedded JPEG that the camera body inserts in the raw file. If you were to take apart that raw file, you'd find all the sensor data that it needs to reconstruct an image for raw processing, and this kind of mediocre quality JPEG image of the same dimensions as your raw image. The reason that we use the JPEG preview is normally it's pretty close. However, trying to read the NEF in a browser environment is really just very slow. It takes many seconds to pull that information out, and it's really the same idea as when you try to process your raw images. You need to set a white balance, maybe some sharpness, a whole bunch of things, and so really we just show you the raw JPEG preview that's embedded in the file here. I'm just going to go down to another one here. This is taken with a Nikon D300, and its activations was up to 20,850 at the time this was shot. Okay, if we take a look at this one, you can see there's not a lot of tonal range. This part right here covers almost the entire image. So these tools do provide you a way to explore your image exposure. On the status bar in the bottom here, it shows this on our current folder. The status, if it is currently processing thumbnails or generating thumbnails, it'll show you a message here. It shows there's 11 items here, and it shows you the total path and the file name. This information will change here if you're doing batch shooting, where you inject the batch shots with metadata from ControlMyNikon. The metadata that is being injected will appear here instead of the path. Let's take a look at one of these images in the larger image browser view. We'll just go down here and select an image, and I'm going to press the spacebar. I can also press the spacebar again, which would take me up to full screen. I'm just going to bring it back to this size so we're able to get all this on our tutorial video. Now when we look at this, it's very plain, and you can see we have a transparent background, and I could change a transparent background. If I go here, and this is a settings panel, and I could say, well, let's make it a blue background, whatever is comfortable for you. I usually just leave it transparent. And you can resize this. You can hide the settings panel, and you can also make this fit. So if I disable the fit button here, I could drag, I could drop it, I could use my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. And if you look really closely at this image, this poor parrot type of bird at the local bird sanctuary was kind enough to let me get really close with a ring flash on my camera. It's a beautiful bird, very, very patient, gets its picture taken a lot. Okay, I'm going to make it fit again. You're able to navigate to the other images in your folder by forward or back, and you can also use the keys on your keyboard. If you use your right arrow key here, it goes to the next image, left arrow key, just keeps on navigating. So your keyboard shortcuts here are the spacebar and your left and right arrow keys, and your escape key, which will take you back to this thumbnail mode. So I'll press the spacebar again, and we're back to this mode. Let's see what else we can do with this in the settings panel. Now I can go to image here, and I could turn it grayscale. Now the reason I want to do that is for these other layers. Sometimes on a really colorful image, you may have difficulty finding a color that you can overlay for grid or your histogram markers, or even your metadata on your overlay. So this just forces it to grayscale to allow you to see your other layers properly. But I'll turn that off for now. And as a way to fit it in the window here, you could snap it back to the window. You can disable it, which just leaves this box for the dimension of the image. That also allows you to turn on the different layers and see what your different data layers are here without seeing the image at all, which is another interesting way to visualize what your exposure is on your image. But I'll turn it back on for now. And you can change the opacity, and this is also used to be able to see your layers properly. And you could scale it here, and you'll need to take that check mark off, and now you could scale. And you notice when you scale it or you drag it, it looks a little pixelated. It goes to a lower quality as you do that. And if I drop it, then it will render to the higher resolution. So I drop it, and it looks a little better. So you'll see that animation as that occurs. Okay, so I'm just going to close this, and let's take a look at the grid. Now you could turn the grid on, and what this allows you to do is turn on a grid of multiple lines. So I'm actually going to go fit back into the window, and you can see here already, it's tough to see the grid lines. I'll just take that off. So you can see the grid lines there. I'll put it back on. So you could change the color of your grid lines. I'm going to make them really stand out with this color right here. You could change the opacity of your grid lines as well. So whatever you're comfortable with. You can use this as a compositional aid. You might have wanted this eye right in the rule of thirds. It's pretty close. You can add the amount of lines here and the vertical lines. I'm going to bring it back to this for rule of thirds. Now if you have additional requirements for composition, maybe you wanted to put a Fibonacci spiral on there, or maybe some other framing lines to allow you to put someone's face in a certain position, maybe in a school picture. You can do that down here through overlays, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. Okay, I'm going to turn the grid off, and you could keep it on. You can turn all these layers on at the same time if you like. Let's take a look at the histogram. And the histogram shows down here on the bottom, and it basically shows you what the exposure is. So if I hold the mouse over here, this is a tracking histogram. Whatever's underneath the mouse cursor now is showing up here as vertical lines. So let's explore this dark area of the beak. So the lines are far to the left side of the histograms. That shows you all the different channels at the same time. Well, let's go to a very bright area, right in here. So it should be further to the right. Now these little dots are important. You see there's little white dots here and red dots here and green dots here and blue dots there. If you see one of these dots, that means there's at least one pixel on this channel that is blown out or pure black. So on this one, this image, there are blowouts on the luminance, red, green, and blue channel. It's very small. If you look closely here, boy, it tapers right off. There's not much. There's actually at least one pixel blowing out, and definitely blowing out on the dark side. But you know, you might want to do that for artistic purposes. Having an image that's blown out or too dark isn't necessarily a bad thing. It really depends what you want your end result to be. Okay, I turn my histogram off. And let's go to the inner exposure. So I'm just going to enable this. Now the inner exposure allows me to see a range of exposures that are within a minimum and maximum. So here, highlighted in green, are all the pixels where the luminance value on your histogram is between 85 and 165. And histogram goes from 0 to 255, so this is kind of in the middle. I'm going to move this a little bit, tighten it up. It's fairly common when you're shooting people that you may want their face to be in a particular luminance range. And so what you can do is you could set that here. You could even type in the value here if you like, or you can just move the slider. And that way you could see at a glance whether you've achieved your desired exposure for a particular area. And you can also change the color here so it is visible on the particular subject that you're looking at. And green works good here, so I'll leave it as green. Okay, so I'm going to disable that, and let's look at the outer exposure markers. Same idea, except this is going to show you the pixels where the luminance is below or above a certain value. So again, between 0 and 255, I want to see everything that is below, let's say, 11, and above 246. So roughly we have 10 on either side of our luminance histogram. I want to see basically where it's getting pretty bright and almost blown out, and pretty dark and almost blown out on the dark end. You could tighten it right up and say, let's show me the stuff that is completely blown out in as black or too bright as white. So you could also change the color here. I find it's a good idea to keep this red, because then what you can do is go turn this one on, and you can get an idea of exactly where your exposures are. Did you achieve the exposure you wanted in a certain area? And are you really close to the edge on some areas? And this view will let you do that. And you can even turn on the regular histogram like that and explore it. So this, in the end, really helps you cut down, on having too many shots where you're trying to nail that particular exposure, especially in a studio environment where you can control a lot of the variables such as lighting. You can set this up and really ensure that your exposure is correct. Now let's take a look at the metadata. So I'm just going to enable this. It shows in the upper left hand corner, and you can change the opacity, whatever looks good up there. You can also change the color of the text. I'll just leave it like this. This shows you the metadata for your current image. So if I go forward, you'll see this information changes. Go forward again, and we'll leave it right here. So if you look at the bottom here, this area is blank, and this is where your batch shooting metadata will appear if you've used it in ControlMyNikon. And that's very useful if you're doing product shoots or high volume photography where you need to bind certain data such as a object ID or a product number to your final image. And you can get more information about that in our Files and Folders video tutorial. Okay, I'm just going to turn this off. And let's take a look at overlays. Now, going back here to the grid, we did have the ability to turn on some lines to help us with composition, but sometimes that is not enough. What I'm going to do here as an example, I'm just going to take this image and I'm going to rotate it here. And you can see you also have the ability to crop this. And this is more useful for the cropping if you're trying to visualize what your images are going to look like when you are doing video. I'll bring that back level. So that's a full 2.39 to 1 crop. If you're shooting video and you wanted to crop it in post-processing to this ratio, this is what it would look like. Okay, I'll bring it back to normal here. And well, we'll just leave this level. If I enable this and go to Browse, I can select a PNG file. And a PNG file, it's kind of like a JPEG, except it's a higher quality and contains transparency information. So any editor that can create PNGs can let you build these overlays. And I'm going to just select one that I've built here in advance. And this one's a bit of an odd size, but I'll just put it on here. And this one's really designed to let you try and get a face inside here. And now you can see it as it overlays. You can adjust the opacity, whether you've achieved your compositional goals by using these boxes. So you can use this to help guide your composition. You can use any PNG image you want, but it's important when you create your PNG overlay that you make it the same size as the source image. So if I go back to my metadata and enable it, I could see that this is 4288 by 2848. So when you go into Photoshop or whatever app to make a PNG, make sure it's this dimension. Then when you lay it on top with overlay, it will look correct. Otherwise, it's going to look compressed and skewed. And you can see you could turn all of these on if you like. And now if we go back to image, you could just turn the image off and you could see the resulting data layers presented here over where the image would be. So if I go back here and do something like, let's get rid of the overlays and the metadata, and I just really wanted to see what my compositional information was, get rid of my grid, you can see it right here. You can see nothing's blown out on these dogs, so I'll describe a different image. Flowers. There's the parakeet again. If I go back here, I'll re-enable it, make it grayscale. I basically set this up however you're comfortable with reviewing this information. A lot of potential here to help get your exposure better on your images. So that's it. That's how you use the image browser functionality within ControlMyNikon. We recommend that you use the internal image browser as it's more finely tuned towards using the features of ControlMyNikon, but feel free to use any image browser you like. If you like to use another image browser that we didn't discuss, normally in those image browsers you can just set a watch folder and they will monitor any new image that you add into a folder and display it. Happy tethering.